Music to the noise, yeah, the mess we make. Machine Gun Kelly get caught in the fray. Facts and logic with a twist of chest. Strip it down to truth, yeah, forget the rest. You propose the lies right out of the park. Look beyond the shadows that set the dark. Sparks of laughter fire up the night, bringing clarity when they blur the fight. Cut through the chaos, yeah, the tangled lies. Steampunk Kelly with the sand clear eyes. Truths and jokes gonna rock this show. Step into light where the real facts glow.
Hello, and thanks for joining me for the Punch Show today. We're going to go and we're going to talk more about the ACA, and just I think I'm going to call this show "This Is Your Brain on Trump," because it's not just the ACA. The ACA is sort of just the icing on the cake, and the end of the ACA. We're just going to start with a couple of video clips, and then I'll dive into the rest of the stuff. But I'm going to just set this up with a couple of pieces of nonsense.
And we're gonna repair the damage done to Obamacare, but we're going to do it using free market principles, using freedom of choice on the part of Americans, and we'll give them the money to use as they see fit.
I look forward to watching you work with Senate Minority Leader AOC. It's going to be amazing. That's going to be really exciting for us.
We would like to go in and look at the root causes of why those costs are so high, and we've been doing that. It's not just talking points. We have had laws signed into law, this Congress, that have begun to chip away at that.
So in both cases, there's this notion that they're trying to mischaracterize what the ACA is, and actually how easy it is to replace it. The fact is that the ACA is free market compromise. It's the idea that it's not the free market, that there's not choice involved. You go on the ACA stock exchange, and there are private insurance companies offering you choices and options, and you choose from the ones that you want, right? And then the insurance company is not getting money from the government and then trying to get you to join. The government is paying part of your supplement. They're supplementing your premium based on your choice. So when Ron Johnson is sitting there saying that somehow this choice, now we're going to have choice. We're going to have what choice? What choice don't you have right now, Ron? One of the things that they really hated about it was the individual mandate. But the individual mandate, people don't realize this. The individual mandate was actually not the brainchild of Democrats. What the Democrats wanted was a public option. A public option would have been funded by like an insurance company run by the government. That would have been actually a lot cheaper. And then you could, if you qualified for that, it would depend on your income. It would be kind of the same as it is right now, to where you could have a cheaper rate if you couldn't afford the real rate. Like the public option would be, to me, the best option right now. If you wanted a real good, like an actual alternative to where people could keep their own health insurance if they wanted, if they like their employer-based insurance, or they like their insurance, what they have, they could choose that. And if they wanted to go with a public option that was cheaper, or something that they couldn't otherwise get, they could get that. That was the original goal. That was when Obama was saying, if you don't like your insurance, you can keep it. That's what he was meaning. Is we just have this other insurance that you had the option to buy, and it would be a government-run insurance. It would be like single payer if you want it, sort of like, you know, optional Medicare for all. And the insurance companies hated that because the insurance companies knew everybody would choose it. If there were a public option available, there would, like, private insurance would go under. It would no. Why would anybody want to choose a more expensive option that puts a lifetime cap on you and you know, denies you pre-existing conditions and all of that kind of stuff? Nobody would want that. That's why the Federalists came up with the idea of an individual mandate. Then when they adopted, when the Democrats adopted that and said, okay, we're going to offer this instead, the Republicans got all outraged about it. There were, I think, they want to talk about how this was, you know, like partisan, like the ACA was all partisan because only Democrats voted for it. But let me tell you, and this is one of the things that's really starting to piss me off about the whole, you know, oh, we're going to just come up with something new in the next 60 days. We don't even have 60 days left. It's like 50 days, and they're not going to even start work on it until the middle of November. Then it's going to be Thanksgiving and Christmas. Do you think that I'm dumb enough to believe that you're going to work over the holidays trying to come up with a master plan to fix our healthcare system? And I'm not saying our healthcare system is perfect. I'm saying that you guys do not even understand enough of what's wrong with it to fix it. This is like asking Elon Musk to fix your car. Yeah, I know he's supposed to be a genius, but I don't think he knows the difference between a tailpipe and a pipe. So, all right. I like the idea of a public option. I don't know how anybody else feels, but a public option to me would be ideal. That's it. Forget all this exchange stuff. Get rid of all that. Just say, you can go and you can get whatever insurance you want. If those private insurance companies want to, you know, put on caps or whatever, they can. We're just going to cover, you know, whatever you want, and we're going to do it cheaper. The only reason the Republicans hate that is because the insurance companies that are paying them hate that, and the insurance companies that are paying for them hate that because they know what it would mean to them. If they're spending, hang on a second, I'm going to look this up. How much does the insurance lobby spend each year? Whoops. So they spent the insurance lobby spent $157 million on lobbying. Insurance companies spent $157 million on lobbying in 2023. $157 million. You think about that. Think about how much money they must be making if they can spend that much money on lobbying to keep things in. And they're spending it. You know, do you think they're giving that money to Bernie Sanders or AOC? I don't. I think they're giving that money to Mike Johnson. I'd have to look it up. Anyway, the point is, there are better alternatives to the Affordable Care Act. The Affordable Care Act was an issue of compromise, as much as the Republicans like to deny that. From the very outset, Chuck Grassley was one of the most involved people in drafting the legislation and in offering amendments. There were, I think it was I want to say there was there. So there were over 564 amendments offered that were Republican amendments. There were 154. I think I'm going off of memory on that one. There were like 154 or 127 that were actually included. The big massive parts of it, like not having a public option and having the individual mandate, were part of it. The Republicans would they would make a proposal, then they would, once that was adopted or considered, they would attack the Democrats for having the proposal in it, even if it was a good proposal. And I'll give you an example of that is the death panels, what they called the death panels. And this is ironic as all get out. Okay, what was the death panel? There was like, they made it sound like the death panel was, you would have this, council of elders that would sit in the dark and decide who gets to live and who gets to die, and who got treatment and who didn't get treatment. It had nothing whatsoever. Like, that is so far removed from what actually happened. What it was is they were going to pay doctors as independent counselors to help families make end-of-life decisions for their loved ones. Like, and I'll give you like a perfect example for it is my own wife and her mother. And her mother had Parkinson's and then got a bladder infection, and then the bladder infection put her in the emergency room, and then the doctor that was taking care of her said, it's time to let her go. And my wife was reluctant on that end because she had just gone in for a bladder infection. And to this day, we don't know if they had just treated the bladder infection. She might have recovered. She might have lived an extra 6 months. She might have lived an extra year. She might still be alive. But her brothers were both just going along with what the doctor said. And, so they were like, oh, it's time to let her go. It's time to let her go. Anyway, so she passed away. We were able to get, I was able to get out there in time to say goodbye to her, literally just hours before she passed. And, my wife is still just devastated by that. She still wonders, like, did they do the right thing? And that's exactly what these so-called death panels were designed to do. Somebody that is not the doctor that's treating her, that has an objective point of view, has trained in these kinds of situations to sit down with the family and talk through things and answer questions and not, judge them for making somebody try to hang on past their due time or kill their mother prematurely. So that's what this was. And this is the most ironic thing of all. Sarah Palin actually instituted that policy in Alaska while she was governor. Before, she was vice president and everything, and she started yelling about death panels, she had already instituted this policy in Alaska. And it's good policy. I think that it's a good idea to have people that are objective and neutral and can sit down and talk with you about whether or not to let your loved one who may be terminally ill go or not. Like, I think that's a good idea. I don't see why that's an issue. And the Republicans proposed that bill. It was 3 Republicans, 1 Democrat proposed that amendment. And then happy President Obama Day. So anyway, I just Sorry, got a troll in my comments there. So, sorry, what was my train of thought? So anyway, let's just go on. I'm going to share with you. This is where we're going. Like, there's a number of policies that have been instituted by Trump, and it's not just each policy by itself and its impact. It's the collective policies, right? So we've got his insane tariffs. We've got his mass deportations. We've got his One Big Beautiful Bill Act with the austerity cuts and all of that kind of stuff to it. And we've got the Medicaid cuts as part of that. And now they're talking about just letting the ACA lapse. And that's where I was going. You know, like, they're not going to come up with a replacement plan by December 31st. Like, that's just not going to happen. So, like, it's silly to even think about that they're going to come together and come up with some improvement, and it's going to include vouchers of some sort. Like, the whole thing, like, the moment you start talking about replacing the ACA with a healthcare savings account of some sort, you have already established you have zero concept at all about what the issues are. You don't even deserve a place in the conversation at that point. That's like saying that circles have 3 angles. Like, it's so stupid, so just inane that somehow vouchers are going to solve the healthcare problems is nuts. You know why we're the only ones that struggle like this, and anywhere in the among the wealthy nations? Because we're the only ones that haven't come to our senses about it. That just give citizens health care. Full stop. Don't make them pay for it. I mean, we were like, and I don't like it when people say, "Oh, you're for free healthcare." No, we're still they pay for their healthcare in England. They pay for their healthcare in Germany. They pay for their healthcare in Finland. They just pay for it through taxes. They don't ration it out based on ability to pay. Like, they always talk about, oh, we're this extreme left. Like, somehow not rationing healthcare based on ability to pay is the extreme position. And actually rationing healthcare based on ability to pay is the moderate position. If you're poor, you don't deserve healthcare. That's the Republican motto. All right. So I went to Claude and I asked Claude, the AI Claude. I know some people don't like AI. I've got mixed feelings on it. I like it for research, but I don't like it, just as a total replacement for research. You still need to look at the sources and stuff. But anyway, I went to AI or I went to Claude and I asked Claude, all right, combine the effects of tariffs, mass deportations, the big beautiful bill, and letting the ACA supplements collapse. What happens? What does that look like? And this is what Claude told me. So I'm not going to see comments. I'm going to switch over to this screen to make it easier to scroll through and read. But I'll come back here and check comments every once in a while. All right. So if I don't answer it right away, it's not that I'm ignoring you. So I didn't even come up with this title. Claude did. or the big, hazard sign like this. This is all Claude. This is just what Claude determined when I asked it this question. Combined policy impact analysis, the perfect storm, healthcare collapse and economic crisis. Comprehensive analysis of ACA study expiration, Medicaid cuts, tariffs, and mass deportations. Critical warning. Without immediate action, these combined policies will create the worst healthcare and economic crisis in modern American history. So we're talking since the Great Depression, we are going to get as bad as we've gotten since the Great Depression. So total Americans losing healthcare coverage, 17 million by 2026 to 2034, combining ACA subsidy expiration and Medicaid cuts. That's a lot of people. And that's not even a hyperbolic number. That's actually probably conservative. There will be 4.8 million who lose their coverage from ACA subsidies expiring starting in 2026. So January 1st, 2026, you're going to have about 5 million people lose their health care coverage. And we'll get into that a little bit in a minute. The losing medical cage carriage from OBB cuts by 2034. The Medicaid cuts actually don't go into effect until after the midterms. Gee, I wonder why that is. If they started these Medicaid cuts in 2025, nobody would vote for Republicans because the impact would be felt before the election date. They're not starting the impact of they're not starting these cuts until 2026 after the election. So then they can run on the election. Oh, the Democrats said this would happen and nothing happened. And it's like nothing happened because it hasn't gone into effect yet. The average premium increase for AC enrollees without subsidies starting this year will be 114% premium increase. And those subsidies matter. And for a lot of people, those subsidies are the difference between having health care and not having health care, which is why you get this 5 million right here. You're talking about 300 to 700 rural hospitals at immediate risk of closure. That's a huge number of hospitals. And let me tell you something. When you close down a rural hospital, it does not matter how good your insurance is. It does not just close down for the uninsured people. It doesn't just close down for the people on Medicaid that are sitting around collecting Medicaid, whatever that's supposed to mean. It shuts down for everybody. You can have the most premium Cadillac insurance money can buy. You could, be the richest man in town. But that hospital is shut down. It's shut down for everybody, including you. That means if you have a heart attack and it's an hour drive to the nearest hospital, you could die on the way to the hospital. That means that if your wife has some sort of issues with her birth and you can't get her to the nearest hospital in time, that she dies and the baby dies. Closures do not discern whether you're a legal immigrant or an illegal immigrant. They don't discern between whether you want to have the baby and don't want to have the baby. They don't discern anything other than it is that much farther to the nearest hospital. And that's that much more time for people to die. So this matters. This matters a lot. And not only that, a lot of times these rural hospitals, they're the largest employers in town. And they're the largest consumer in town. They buy stuff. Where do you think they buy their food? From the local farmers. Who do you think they employ? The farmer's wife. So it's going to cost, from tariffs over the next 10 years, it's going to cost American consumers $1.3 trillion. You can, when they say, oh, we raise $1 trillion, we brought in $100 trillion from tariffs. They're just saying we put a regressive tax of $1 trillion on Americans. And I say it's a regressive tax because it is. If you are a poor person, you are spending a much higher percentage of your income on tariffs than if you are a rich person. This is going to cause the government, the GDP, to reduce by 7.4% as a result of the mass deportations. And then that's not even factoring in all the other stuff. But you do not reduce your workforce that much and not have the impact felt by the economy. Like they do things, I think it was I want to say it was Animal House, where there were these guys that were stoned and they're sitting there talking about, oh, so like a whole universe could be in my thumbnail. And then, like the other one's like, yeah. And then in that universe, there could be another guy that is looking at his thumbnail and saying, I've got a whole universe in my thumbnail. And this is what I think of Trump's policies, is they are stone frat boy policies, like things that a frat boy who was stoned out of his mind, hey, dude, we could just build this wall going all the way from the East Coast to the West Coast. We make it really, really tall so people couldn't climb over it. Yeah, that would stop all illegal immigration, wouldn't it? Like, oh, dude, we could just like give everybody $5,000 and then they wouldn't need insurance anymore, because that would just like cover all their insurance. Oh, hey, dude, what if we just deported all the illegals? Like, this is what it sounds like. It's stoned frat boy politics. 340,000 healthcare jobs lost from subsidy expiration. This is what I'm saying about with the hospitals closing. Those are jobs. Those are jobs. And when you're talking about this part, the 7% from mass deportations, a lot of those farms are going to be closed too. That's where that part of that negative 7.4% comes from. So when you close down the farms and when you close down the hospitals, you're closing down the small towns. Like everything else is in support. There's no more industry to drive the small town. So you're just shuttering entire small towns. Nobody hates rural Americans as much as Donald Trump does. Nobody has done more and is doing more to damage rural Americans than Donald Trump is doing. And then if you look at the 1.2 million total jobs lost from Medicaid SNAP cuts by 2029. Now you're going to be like, well, why would SNAP cuts and Medicaid cost jobs? And it's not immediately obvious, but like, let's use SNAP as an example. So you've got, this community, let's say there's, 500 people on SNAP in that community. And each of those people gets $100 in SNAP benefits. I'm just using round numbers. I'm just making it up. This is all hypothetical. So 100 times 500 is what? 50,000? I think so. Yeah. 50,000. So that's $50,000 in put into that community that is not being spent otherwise. All right. So that is enough that they're all going to the grocery store and buying their food, right? So that extra $50,000 in business is enough to hire maybe 2, maybe 3 extra cashiers to check out the people that are buying all this stuff with SNAP benefits. Then those people go and they buy money, but spend their money at McDonald's. And then McDonald's hires new people. And this is what we call a multiplier effect. This is like the money keeps getting spent and respent all the way up the ladder. And so it's not just a dollar for dollar. You don't just inject a dollar into the economy. You inject a dollar plus all the money that is multiplied through that initial investment. And like SNAP has anywhere from like a 1.5 to 1.8 multiplier attached to it. Which means like for every dollar you spend, you actually get an 80 cent return in addition to that initial dollar, right? So you actually help the economy. This is not something that people talk about when they're talking about cutting SNAP benefits and giving people things for free. You're not just giving people things for free. You're spending tax money. You're investing tax money. And then you've got other hidden multiplier effects. If you spend that money on food and the mom goes and she buys food and her kid eats and then he's not hungry and so he can study, and then because he studies he gets better grades, and because he gets better grades he ends up going to a better college, and then he ends up inventing something, or he ends up becoming like a productive person in society, more productive, more accomplished, because he was able to eat food when he was a kid. Like people, starving kids do not study well. So if they have Medicaid, did you know, this is like a shocking thing to me. I did not know this. I just looked it up today. Did you know that there are over 3 million children right now in America? American citizens, not counting the undocumented children, but American citizen children. There are over 3 million American citizen children right now who do not have any kind of insurance. That's sad. We're the richest country in the world, and we can't even take care of our own children. We don't even want to feed our own children. We don't even want to provide basic health care for our own children. What kind of wealth is that? That's not wealth. That's opulence. That's disgusting. It's obscene that you have a country where a man has $500 billion and a child can't get health care or food. We don't need, I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with being wealthy, but I think there is something obscene about letting child live in absolute depravity so that somebody else can be worth $500 billion. There's nuance there. There's in-betweens. It doesn't have to be a false dichotomy. It doesn't have to be one thing or the other thing. You can have both wealthy people in a society and children that can eat. All right. So now we're going to go into healthcare coverage losses over time. When we're combining the ACA expansion or expiration and the Medicaid cuts from the One Big Beautiful Bill. And then we'll look at the combined total. Okay. So the orange line here is just from the ACA expiration. And you'll notice that most of that comes in the first year. And then by the time that's done really hurting, then you're going to start having the OBB built on it. And I would say Claude probably did not factor in the death spiral, because I think that this number should actually be a lot higher. And I'll explain that in a minute. But this is like this year's cut, and then This is when the Medicaid starts cutting in. So even by this standard, we're talking about what, 14 million people off of their insurance by 2014, or by 2034. The thing that it's not factoring in here is the death spiral. And the death spiral is this. You have the whole way that insurance is supposed to work is what they call shared risks or risk pools. And you put the healthy people and the unhealthy people in the same pool, and it kind of evens out. You know, it's like if you put the hot water and the cold water in the same sink, you're going to end up with lukewarm water, right? The insurance company would like to separate the hot water and keep the hot water hot and keep the cold water cold, which is fine if you're dealing with water. When you're talking about health care insurance, what happens is the premiums for people that are really healthy can be lower because you're not going to end up having to pay them. And the premiums for sick people are going to be a lot higher because you're going to end up having to pay for them. There's a higher risk. And that's the way insurance works. And that's why the idea of insurance for healthcare is innately a terrible idea. The whole motive and goal of insurance is to not pay or to make money. And they can't make money off of sick people. And the other thing is, sick people also are inclined to be poor because they're sick. So because they're sick and have chronic illnesses, they are less likely to be able to achieve because they can't go to work sometimes, or because they call in sick a lot, or because they have disabilities. Like, I'm not saying it's, you can't get ahead if you have a disability, or you can't get ahead if you have chronic illness. I'm saying that statistically, you are less likely to succeed if you are sick all the time than if you are a healthy person. And not all health is contingent upon what you eat. It does not mean that rich people don't drink soda pop and poor people do drink soda pop. These kind of stereotypes have just dumbed down the conversation. You can eat healthy and still be sick. The healthiest guy I knew died of cancer. This guy grew all his own food. I mean, you could not get healthier than this guy in terms of what he ate. He got cancer, so he just turned his life around. He grew his own wheatgrass, vegetables, and everything. He bought, grass-fed, locally sourced meat, everything. And guy ate as healthy as anybody could eat. I think he ended up going vegan at the end too, but he still got cancer again. Had nothing to do with what he was eating. It actually had to do with what he was working, I think. He stripped floors, he would, strip and revarnish. He'd strip and revarnish wooden floors. He's really good at his job too. He was a nice guy. Really miss him. Anyway, the point is, you can't correlate laziness with this. And illness correlates with ability to pay. It's not work that correlates with ability to play or work ethic. It's ability to work that correlates with ability to pay. That's what I want to say. So anyway, you're dealing with an extra, even by this standard, 16 million, 15 million people losing their health insurance over the next 10 years. And I think this is conservative. I think it's actually going to be much more like 25 million. Oh, because what I was going to talk about was these death spirals, and death spirals say as So prices go up, and so then healthy people are going to look at those high prices and say, nah, I'm just not going to get health insurance. I'm not going to get sick. Talk to any 25-year-old kid in the world, they think they're immortal, right? And so then they're not paying into the healthcare system. Then because they're not paying into it, that much less money is coming into it. And now sicker and sicker people are the only ones paying into it, but they're more likely to need it. And so then the insurance companies have to pay out more. And so they raise their prices more, which means, like the people that just, are sort of sick, they can't afford it. They stop paying into it, and it gets worse and worse. And so I think I've seen estimates that within like 5 or 6 years, you can see like about only 30% of the people currently on ACA would still be on it. So this number could actually be much, much higher. And this is what I was talking about with this will substantiate what I'm saying about, like, if you cut the premium cost, or the if you look at the premium cost for ACA enrollees with enhanced subsidies and without enhanced subsidies. All right. So right now, let's say you've got the average family of 4. The premium is $1,904 for a family of 4. That's okay. So this is this year. All right. This is this year. Right now, with advanced subsidies, the premiums for someone who has subsidies is $888 if they're in the bottom quintile. By next year, that $888 is $1,904, and that's the bottom quintile. So for a family of 4, I think that puts them, they're making like $33,000. Do you think that if family of 4 has an extra, $1,100-$1,200 lying around the house, sitting in the cushions, for the, if they're making, and that's less than 33,000, anybody, but it's going to be above the poverty line, so it's going to be around, like over 20,000, but less than 30,000. That's like $2,500 a month. And if you got a family of 4, you need at least a 1-bedroom apartment, right? You can't just have everybody living in the living room. You can't have an efficiency. Probably 2 bedrooms. How many places do you think you can get a 2-bedroom house or 2-bedroom apartment for less than $1,000? It's just crazy. So you're talking, and this is a month. Or no, this is annual premium cost. Okay. So anyway, if you're in the top 10%, that's going to be an extra $6,000 a year. I actually think these numbers look low, but yeah, I've seen, they make these mistakes. This is actually per month. So the rural hospital financial impact over the next 10 years, right now, if everything were left unchecked, the rural hospitals, which by the way are already struggling, there already are some closing. Like, it's already being impacted. So then what they did with the Medicaid cuts is they said, okay, we're going to cut this money out, but we're going to add $50 back in just for the rural. But if you even add the 60, so they cut this much and then they add back that, the net impact, so they cut $64 billion, they add 50 back in, And so then the net impact is still $58 billion. They're basically cutting in half the amount of money that rural hospitals are going to get. And these are already struggling hospitals. And that's not including the impact of ACA cuts. This is just based on the federal budget. And so it's like when you factor in this and this, all these people that are going to be losing insurance and all these people that are going to be losing insurance, you're going to have a huge crisis on your rural hospitals. So here's the combined economic impacts. This is okay. So the healthcare jobs lost, they're going to be at 1.5 million jobs lost. This is between over the next 10 years. There's going to be 1.5 million jobs lost. The GDP is going to shrink 7.7%. The federal deficit, that's the thing that they're trying to make it out to see, be a big thing. Like this is all to bring down the deficit, right? This is the deficit, all right, not the debt. They're adding $1 trillion to the deficit. That means they're making the deficit is how much money we spend over what we make in a year. The debt is the aggregate total of the deficits. So they're adding $1 trillion a year to the deficit. The deficit. And part of the reason for that is when you shrink the GDP, when you make the GDP go down, you reduce the amount of money that you collect in taxes. And when you reduce the amount of money you collect in taxes, you increase the deficit. It's like if you want a perfect example of that, go and ask your boss for a pay cut and then try and balance your budget with less pay. That's the Republican solution to everything is less pay. Let's cut revenue. And then they talk about, oh, well, the tariffs increase revenue. No, the tariffs take money that is, they're replacing tax cuts, progressive tax cuts, and they're replacing some of that with regressive tax increases. They're literally taking money from the poor to replace money that they've given to the rich. This is your brain on MAGA. So the household costs are going to go up $3,800 from tariffs. And workers' wages, oh, wow. It's just 0%. And inflation, this isn't even talking about inflation. So projected GDP impact through 2028. This is while Trump is still running. I don't think that they're going to be talking about Trump re-election for an unconstitutional third term by 2028. This is the combined mass impact of tariffs and mass deportations. So tariffs are going to slightly increase GDP, and the reason for that is that it's actually, that sounds like a good thing, but it's actually a bad thing, because GDP is calculated by the amount of consumer spending plus the amount of investments in new business. So existing businesses don't count. Those count under consumption. New businesses count under investment. Government spending and net exports. And so this number is going to be affected by tariffs, because tariffs raise the price on things and therefore reduce the consumption of those things, which means that the import number is going down, not that the export number is going up. So it's like, instead of spending $1 million on imports and exporting $900,000 of things, Now we're spending $500,000 on imports and exporting $600,000 of things. So we technically have gone into a surplus, but both in terms of consumption and in terms of exports, which are good, we've gone down. So the idea of adding net exports onto GDP is not supposed to be a measure of how successful we are there. It's more a calibration of trying to figure out how much of that is domestic. Okay, so then the mass deportation impact is going to shrink the economy nearly 8%. And then, this is the calibration effect. So why would mass deportations have such an impact on our GDP? Well, first of all, however many millions of people, how many illegal workers are in the U.S.? We're just so let's say there's 10 million illegal workers. That's not counting their families or whatever. You can't just take 10 million people out of the workforce and not impact the economy, especially when you consider what a lot of those people are doing. They are, there's, like mainly, there's the agriculture workers, which actually make up, I think, 4% of the undocumented workers are agriculture workers, but 40% of our agriculture workers are undocumented workers. So you see these two things, like people don't understand how percentages work. And it's just, we have a lot more other jobs that are agricultural than we have, and so that's why you can say only 4% of the illegal immigrants are working in agriculture, as though, it barely makes a drop in the bucket. But way less than 4% of our population is agriculture workers, right? Like, I doubt how many people are, like picking strawberries for a living that are watching this show. So when you take 40% of a workforce away, you basically take that business away. And, you don't just only pick 60% of your strawberries and then get by with 60% of the money, because a lot of that money was spent harvesting on seeding. A lot of that money was spent on growing the crop, on the water, on the fertilizer. A lot of that money goes into shipping. So it's not just that you're losing that portion of what those workers would have been able to produce. You end up not being able to have a harvest, and you lose 100% of your farm. That's why you're going to see there are estimates that and this is another thing that was like under attack already. In 1980, I think it was, we had like a little over 2.5 million farms that were privately owned farms and small farms, meaning less than 500 acres. Over the last 45 years, 500,000 of those have been shut down. And for the most part, they've been bought up by large corporate farms. That's 45 years it took to close down 500,000 farms. And it's been the slow, steady progress of Republican economics at work. But now we've got trickle down on steroids. Actually, that is a good way to describe Trump economics. Trickle down on steroids. So we're going to have another 400,000 that could close between 2026 and 2030. And it's a lot of that is due to these mass deportations. Because you can't get by, a business can't get by with making 60% of what it was making. A business shuts down when it loses 40% of its profit, because then it's not a profit anymore, or 40% of its revenue, because then there is no profit. They're losing money. And some people say, well, why don't they just bring over workers legally? Because there's not really a workable way to do that. It costs, on average, for a season, it costs the average small farmer $7,000 per worker to bring them over legally. So if they have, and that's not $7,000 including everything, that's $7,000 more than if they were to just hire somebody that's undocumented. So if they have 10 workers and they were to bring them over legally, it would cost them $70,000 more. And most of them are operating like around a $30,000 to $50,000 profit margin. If they're profiting at all, a large number of farms right now are actually losing money. And the tariffs sure aren't helping. So here's how it hits the rural. And this is like, I really wish the MAGAs could like hear this, like the ones that are in my community, the ones who, like, I know they work hard, and I know MAGAs have been told their whole life that the enemy is socialism, that somehow the Democrats are evil and all they want to do is go out and chop off the genitals of their children and, you know, force women to get abortions and, you know, all this crazy stuff. And it's just like, who is the one actually hurting you? Like, honestly, I wish I could just ask them. Has transgender people hurt you? Like, do you even know anyone who is transgender? How have they affected your life? Who is the one that's actually harming your farm, your family? It's not transgender people. I can guarantee you, you have not been affected by a transgender person or some gay people getting married or by the Black Lives Matter movement. None of those things are your enemy. Your enemy is Donald Trump and the entire MAGA movement. They're the ones that are trying to take away your farm. They're the ones that are trying to take away your health care. They're the ones that want to turn you from a business owner into a drone working on somebody else's corporate farm. So rural communities are already, you know, it's like they're already suffering more. They talk about like the inner cities a lot, but the hardest hit communities right now are the rural communities. Did you know that you're 24% more likely to be on SNAP benefits if you live in rural America than if you live in urban America? Like, think about that. That's the stereotype is flipped upside down, right? Everybody wants to make it out like, oh, it's just the republic, you know, the welfare mom with the with the what the LV Louis Vuitton purse and the jumps into her Mercedes after she buys a basket full of lobster with her food stamps. You know, like that kind of crazy nonsense. But the actual reality is it's the homestead mom that's just trying to grow her own food as much as possible and has to go and supplement it with food stamps. The rural community is suffering, and it's going to suffer a lot more as a direct result of Trump. Like, you really need to stop just hating Democrats long enough to realize who's hurting you. The rural areas have a higher poverty rate and rely more heavily on Medicaid. 1.8 million rural residents will lose Medicaid coverage from the OBBB cuts alone. 1.8 million rural residents. If I were to say urban residents, they would cheer that on. But 1.8 rural residents will lose their Medicaid coverage. The hospital financial crisis, 300 to 700 rural hospitals are at immediate risk of closure. Many rural hospitals derive 40 to 80% of revenue from government payers, Medicare, Medicaid. The 58 to 137 billion in rural Medicaid cuts over 10 years will force widespread closures. And that is going to be devastating. And like I said before, it does not matter how good your insurance is if your hospital is closed. The higher ACA insurance, the ACA premium increases. Rural areas already have higher insurance premiums due to limited insurer competition. Without subsidies, premiums will become completely unaffordable, some facing $20,000 a year annually. And that's relatively conservative. Yeah, there are people that are going to have much higher premiums than that. Because one, the subsidies help the insurance companies not lose money. They also made sure that insurance companies could cap how much money they made. This is something a lot of people don't know. The ACA caps how much money insurance can spend on, I'm sorry, how do I, puts an 85%, for an insurance company. Okay, what is the way to say this? 85% of what insurance companies spend has to be, or what they collect on premiums, 85% actually has to be spent on healthcare. That's what I'm trying to say. So they only have like 15% of the premium at most that they can spend on things other than actual healthcare. So there's already a cap. There's kind of a salary cap, if you will, on insurance companies. A lot of people don't know that. Like they have to spend 85% of the money they generate through premiums on actual health care. And if they don't, they have to give that money to the government as a fine. So you don't think that they're going to jack up those premium prices if they can? If they don't have that limitation anymore? Rural areas already have higher insurance premiums due to limited insurer competition. Without subsidies, premiums will become completely unaffordable, some facing $20,000 plus annual costs. So that's the other thing, is you've already got some places where, especially in states where they haven't opened up the Medicaid, they haven't expanded Medicaid, where you have places, counties, you can't even get private insurance because nobody will go and offer it. And so now you have no way to buy insurance. That's going to go up. The reduced or no competition is going to go up. And the prices are going to go up. And the price of doing the business is going up. You're getting, like, all of a sudden you're spending $70,000 a year more on your workers and getting 0% more return on it. And then your insurance premiums are going up. So it's going to cost, like, all of a sudden $100,000 a year more to be a farmer on a farm that's making $30,000 a year. Right? How's that sustainable? Labor shortage from deportations. Agriculture loses about 220,000 workers. 225,000 workers from mass deportations. Rural farms. And it's like we talk about farms. We don't talk about the meatpacking plants. You want to know what? You want me to scare the hell out of you? Yeah, what happens when bacon starts going up? Yeah, think about that. You want to pay $10 a pound for bacon? Go ahead and keep voting MAGA. And food processors heavily depend on immigrant labor. Mass deportations will devastate rural agricultural economies. And I just do not see why no one in the media seems to be like focusing on this. No one in the Democratic Party is focusing on this. You want to get, rural voters? Just tell them what the facts are. Just ask them. Like Trump would go around and he'd say, what have you got to lose? And then ask them, what have you got to lose? If you keep voting for Trump, if you keep voting for MAGA, you've got your farm to lose. You've got your hospital to lose. You've got your family to lose. You've got your health care to lose. And suicide rates for farmers are 3.5 to 5 times higher than the rest of the country. You've got your life to lose. You've got everything to lose by continuing to bet on Trump. What have you got to gain by voting for a Democrat? You've got affordable health care to gain. You've got, a way that you could legally hire immigrant workers without losing your business to gain. I think sometimes we make out these, like the farmers that, why don't they just hire someone legally? As though they're just like, Mr. Smithers sitting there collecting billions of dollars and not actually, considering the answer to the question, why don't they hire legal immigrants? Because they can't. We have made the means to hire legal immigrants so arduous that it's insane. And the only ones that can keep up with it are the large corporate farms. For instance, if you have if you're hiring illegal immigrants, one of the things you have to do is you have to pay for their transportation and you have to provide for their housing while they're here. And this is for the ag visas, not for the non-ag visas. But the farmer has to pay for their hospitality while they're here. So if you're a large corporate farm, you can build bunks, like big bunk cabins, and they can all stay in that big bunk cabin, and that satisfies. And you fill that with food and all of that. You can charter a single bus and have everybody come up from northern Mexico. And they just, that frays the cost per individual. When you are hiring people, first you have to run an ad for 60 days, or for 30 days, you have to try and find local people to do it, right? And so you run an ad in the paper or whatever. You have to show that you tried to do it. Well, that fee, whether you're hiring 10 people or 100 people or 1,000 people, is the same. When you actually transport them over, you can charter a bus and bring over 50 people at one time for, $5,000, or you can bring over 10 people one at a time for $500 each, and it's still $5,000. The ability to operate larger farms and get more workers actually is a lot cheaper for the large farms and the corporate farms than it is for the small private farms. So all of these things together combine to make it too expensive for the small farmers to hire local workers. And so, or to hire immigrant workers. So let's, like, maybe it's the law that's immoral here. Maybe it's the law that's wrong. You hear all these people, oh, they should come over the way my ancestors did. And it's like, they are coming over the way your ancestors did. The difference is, when your ancestors came over that way, it was legal. Like, make immigration legal again. We didn't just, if we had from the beginning said you need to have a college degree and a visa to come over here, America wouldn't exist and we wouldn't exist. So tariff prices increase. Rural Americans spend higher portions of income on goods affected by tariffs, vehicles, farm equipment, building materials. Tariffs add $1,300 to $3,800 per household annually, a massive burden for lower income rural families. So again, you've got, now you just start imagining you're a small farmer, you're making 50 grand a year, you have 10 workers a year or a season, right? And so now it's going to cost you 70 grand a year more to hire your workers. You have to pay $20,000 a year more for your family's insurance. You're spending $2,000 a year more on tariffs. Your local hospital is closed. You've lost your Medicaid. Who is hurting you? Is it the trans guy? Is it the trans woman playing junior high volleyball? How is that person your enemy and not the person that is literally doing everything they can to destroy your life on a personal level? Name one thing that Donald Trump is doing that helps you. And I can name 10 things that are hurting you. So service reduction cascade, hospital closures mean no local emergency care, longer emergency rides, like we were already talking about, no obstetric services, pregnant women traveling 60 plus miles. Imagine going through a pregnancy and the nearest OB doc is 90 miles away. There's no cancer treatment, no dialysis, no mental health services. You think all that stuff doesn't add up? And so we end up in an economic death spiral. Hospital closures trigger job losses. Population exodus. So the declining property values. You think like people are just going to have to move away. And then because people are moving away, property values start going down. So even the ones that stick it out don't know what, the price of their house, their farm is going down. That's already losing money. The reduced tax base. So that means less public services, which means the schools close. And then the whole town shuts down. We're going to have entire rural towns just shut down because of Donald Trump's economy. And you can tell me that, oh, well, they deserve it. They should have known better. They voted for this. And I agree that on a certain level, they do. But I am not a spiteful and hateful and vindictive little man like Donald Trump. I also recognize these are real people that have just been really genuinely deceived. They have a news channel that's dedicated 24/7 to lying to them, and they have been cultivated to believe everything they say is true. They have been told that trans people are their enemies so much that they don't even stop and think about who their real enemy is. They've just been fed this over and over again. My wife has an uncle that he just has Fox News on all the time. She went to go visit for a week, and it was just always on. He has the TV on all the time, and it's always Fox News. And she's like, just she didn't like come back Republican, but she came back. She's just like, just through osmosis, you start to develop this negative reaction to everything. It's just 24/7 blaming the Democrats, yelling about the Democrats. There's no solutions. They, like with the ACA, and they're talking about, oh yeah, we can come up with a solution in 60 days. No, you can't. No, Mike Johnson's like, we've got notebooks. Notebooks aren't going to solve the problem, Mike. Concepts of plans are not plans. Especially when the concept is something stupid. Like the little vouchers, your cute little vouchers. Vouchers. That's your solution. You're going to replace the ACA with vouchers. So these are the states with the highest hospital risk. Look, Texas, Kansas, Oklahoma, Mississippi, Missouri, Tennessee, Alabama, and Georgia. Red state, 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 and red state. You've got Texas, 75 hospitals at risk of closure right now. Kansas, another 35. Like, this is like, we need to tell them we are not your enemy. Donald Trump is your enemy. MAGA is your enemy. That's what the Democrats need to run on. They need to stop running on Trump being bad. No, what they need to do is Trump is attacking you. Trump is the one that is putting your farm in jeopardy. Trump is the one that's making it hard for you to find employees. Trump is the one that's making your hospital shut down. And the Republicans are ones trying to make your hospital shut down. It's all of this stuff that's happening to you is happening because of Republicans. It's not happening because some trans girl participated in a high school volleyball game. That's not your enemy. Gay people getting married is not the reason that your hospital shut down. The real tangible things in your life that are going wrong are going wrong. You can draw a straight line to a Republican policy. So now, economic cost by category over 10 years. All right, so let's look at this. Okay, we'll start. Medicaid cuts. Are going to cost $1 trillion. Mass deportations are going to cost the economy another $1 trillion. Lost GDP from deportation. Oh, so just the deportations themselves are going to cost $1 trillion. Then the GDP that we lose, this is like spending $1 trillion to shoot ourselves in the right foot. And then this is spending another $2 trillion to shoot ourselves in the left foot for having shot ourselves in the right foot. So that's the lost GDP is going to be, we're going to lose almost $2 trillion in GDP, $1.7 trillion in GDP due to mass deportations that we spent $987 billion on deporting. The household tariff costs, that's going to cost, it's not going to raise $1 million or $1.5 trillion. It's going to cost American shoppers $1.5 trillion. It is not money that's raised. It's not like money that didn't exist now exists. No, that's money that's taken from the poorest Americans to pay for the tax cuts of the richest Americans. We are paying taxes. Like this to me is just like, and you are worried about trans people? You're worried about trans people? Well, you've got this guy sitting there taking $2,000 a year out of your wallet to pay for tax cuts for Elon Musk, and you think that trans people are the problem? I don't even like. I have my set of issues with people that are anti-trans. I cannot stand it. Trans people are people, and the trans women are women, and trans men are men. They don't think they're men and they don't think they're women. They are men and they are women. And if you don't have an issue with, if you have an issue with that, fine. You can just go away. I don't care what you think because you do not know what I know. But that is not your issue either way. People existing as trans people are not the reason that your household is getting tariffed $2,000 a year. We're going to lose tax revenue, another $300 billion. And the healthcare job losses are going to cost another $31 billion. So, and then this is all the, references for this. But you see my points, right? Like, this is not so Rob, what's going on? So I'm going to go back and I'm going to look at, see which comments are worth referring to. It looks like Biden left in 20. No, Biden did not left in. I think he means let in 2015 to 20 million illegals. That's not true. Biden did not let in 15 to 20 million illegals. First of all, illegal is not a noun. It's an adjective. And secondly, Joe Biden did not let in anybody illegally. What he did was apprehend 15 to 20 million people that were trying to enter illegally and deport them. There were some that came in and legally requested asylum or some kind of refugee status. There were some that were flown in legally. But no, Joe Biden did not let in any illegals. Okay, Biden is the reason that the economy didn't collapse in 2021. How much money do you make being an agitation douche all day on podcasts? Not enough. Prime Minister pissed the blessed sister of subsidies. I don't know what that's supposed to mean. Do I think these tariffs will last forever, though? Well, there's an actual question. I do not think the tariffs will last forever. I think they'll end up getting struck down by the Supreme Court. At least I hope so. They are unconstitutional. But what I do worry about, and this is, something I've thought about, what happens if the Supreme Court does strike down the tariffs? Does Donald Trump then just go to Congress and say, okay, authorize these tariffs? And then the Republicans have to do it, right? But then if the Republicans do it, they have to go back and they have to defend to their constituents in 2026 why they taxed them. Like, I don't think these tariffs are all that popular in Kansas. Tariffs are meant to be temporary leverage to make market availability of products more competitive. Initially, I'd say on a certain level, that's right. I would say even that nowadays is no longer the case. The markets have become so internationalized that I don't even think that you can say that it helps leverage the market ability. There are certain cases where maybe, like where, the US is trying to rebuild the chips, like maybe in some very narrow cases. But even then it's like, I don't remember the specific numbers, but like the washing machine tariffs, it did end up resulting in opening up a new manufacturing center. But it's funny, the actual cost, it ended up costing like $10 for every dollar it generated. It was like the new washing machine factories are actually losing money when you factor in the tariffs. And and this is what was the other solution to the last? I'm not sure when this was asked, but what was the other solution of the last 4 years of neglect and ignorance we had? And that's which 4 years are you talking about? The 4 years under Trump, or the 4 years under Biden? The economy actually solidified and grew. We had the strongest economy in the world when Biden left office. What day was a continuation? I don't understand what the question. What day was a continuation of the wasted Obama years? I don't care what. I don't even understand what a continuation. I know the economy, the growth of the economy. When Obama inherited the economy, he inherited the worst economy since the Great Depression, and it steadily grew all the way up until the COVID, actually. So yes, Trump's. If what you're asking is, was Trump's success a continuation of the Obama economy? Yes. Trump was carried by the Obama economy. Overpaid government jobs. I don't know what that means. I don't think you know what that means. I don't think you even know what government pay is, much less for what, like this is just hollow rhetoric that has nothing to do with what I'm talking about. What do you think? What do you think this is because of mass deportation? No, rural hospitals are not closing because the people that migrated here have overused them. That's not even a starting point. Yes, Orange County is in California. It's also Republican. It was also a very Reagan state. In the 80s and 90s, it was still a Republican state for the most part. Didn't swing Democrat until the early 90s, I should say. We didn't become 30. Oh, okay. Oh, that's funny because $37 trillion in debt. All we've been doing is funding programs that don't give a return. Yeah, that's like, that's just saying stuff. There's no substance to this question, or it's just blaming 37 trillion. No, that, like, do you have any idea at all what you're talking about? How is that $37 trillion spent? How did we get that deficit? How did we get that? Like, you're just saying things. Like, this is the MAGA way, is to just say things. Who is taking away the farms? Donald Trump just added trillions of dollars to the debt with tax cuts. And you're like sitting there talking about, well, all 37 trillion. Go look at who generated the debt. Actually look at it. I could answer your question. I know the answer. But if I do, you're not going to answer. You're not going to listen anyway. Just go and look it up. Go and look up what happens after we cut taxes. Look up what happens to the debt after we cut taxes. Just do it. Just do it for yourself. And it's not a lie. All children do not get free health care. Like, you just like say stuff. Like, don't just say stuff. Look it up. Look it up. Actually, look at what the facts are. There's nothing wrong with being informed. Israel gets free healthcare. Okay. So does like every other country in the world. Ha ha ha. You can't even properly argue your side of the issue because yours. Whatever that means. See, this is your idea of proper arguments. Like, I sit there and I provide an hour and a half of actual objective facts. And then you're just like, LMAO, you can't even properly argue your side of the argument because you're so brainwashed. You retard DEI lefty ideals, like, victim card, invalid opinion. So anyway, Rob here is just yelling and screaming and hollering a lot. Okay. And we got MP here, another boy. It's like a tag team. It's like you just have one idiot come on and then yell a bunch of stuff. Okay. So, okay, Cheryl is actually not MAGA. So anyway, I looked through your comments. There doesn't seem to be a lot of relevant ones, but oh well. The bottom line, and I really wish MAGAs could listen and really think about what's going on, because the country is really hurting as a result of Trump's economy. That's not that's not just what I'm saying. It really is. Those are objective facts. We're like right now, we're steaming into a recession full speed ahead. And it's a direct result of Trump's policies. These three things, the mass deportations, or four things now: mass deportations, the austerity cuts in the OBBB, the tariffs, and the cutting ACA are just gonna they're gonna snowball, and we're gonna have like a really, really, really terrible recession, like the worst recession of our lifetime. I don't know if it'll get as bad as the Great Recession, the Great Depression, but I will say this: a lot of the things that they put in after the Great Depression, like Social Security, are things that Trump has been trying to undermine. And these are called economic stabilizers. And the whole point of them is that stabilizer means it stabilizes the economy if you start going down. So they aren't special pieces of legislation you have to draft and pass in order to help the economy. So if you're, for instance, SNAP benefits exist. If you worked on SNAP and then you lost your job and now you don't have money for food, you can get SNAP benefits automatically. All you have to do is go and apply for them, and you get those SNAP benefits, and they just kick in regardless. All right. And that keeps the floor higher. It keeps the poverty floor higher. And so it prevents another Great Depression. But when you start taking away those stabilizers and then you start vigorously destabilizing the economy, you're only going to end up with a recession. So the undermining of those stabilizers is going to end up hurting the economy. I think there must be like some kind of troll farm that YouTube is hiring to stalk me. So I guess, Kelly is a girl name. Okay. Paris is a girl name too. So all right. Thanks for joining and participating. Appreciate all your MAGA feedback. I'll talk to you later. It's been real.